Let's get some analysis on this and bring in David Des Roches. He's a good friend of the show, also an associate professor over at the National Defense University in the U.S. He joins me now from Washington. David, good evening to you. Good to have you on the show. For right now, it seems the U.S. is saying that it is willing to re-enter the deal. That is the current stance. Israel, as we all know, has long opposed this deal with Iran. It is not party to the negotiations. So what is the middle ground for these two?
Well, good question. So the context of this is you had 6 rounds of negotiations, indirect negotiations, that seem to be making at least some progress. And in the 7th round, which just broke up this week, apparently, according to both American and European participants, the Iranians just backtracked on things that had been proposed and agreed. And I think that the Europeans and the Americans, and there were also press reports that the Chinese and the Russians were losing patience with Iran. Israel is greatly concerned about what's going on here. They're greatly concerned about the possibility of an Iranian nuclear program. And so it seems that this is their way of sending a message that these talks are not going to, go on indefinitely while the Iranian nuclear program advances, that there actually is a sense of urgency here and that this is not an indefinite program.
Israel is believed to have previously targeted Iran and its nuclear program, either through the assassination of leading scientists as well as attacks sabotaging the Natanz nuclear site. Do you feel that Israel could go ahead with attacking Iran without U.S. backing?
Yes, well, they've done all these other actions without U.S. backing. Israel, they've done far more than you've mentioned there. Israel has demonstrated in the past an ability and a desire to take unilateral action. They don't wait for an American approval on that. The problem is that Iran's program is so big and so diffuse that it is not probable that Israel will be able to completely destroy the program. And indeed, we're almost at the point where what we're talking about is really knowledge. And, if a facility is destroyed, it just gets rebuilt. And in a couple of months, you're back to where you start there. So I think that, there is a consensus that some sort of negotiated settlement would be better. But again, if the Israelis conclude that the Vienna talks are just playing for time, they probably will take some action, but it's unlikely to completely solve the problem by itself.
Like you said, the dynamics within the JCPOA is experiencing a change. China and Russia perhaps growing a little bit more impatient with Iran. More recently, we've seen the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia reaching out to Tehran directly. How do you feel these geopolitical shifts are actually affecting the stability in the region when it comes to the revival of this deal?
Yeah, good question. It's hard to tell. These are still early days. I mean, what Iran and Saudi Arabia are doing is basically trying to find to return to where they were prior to the execution of Nimr al-Nimr in Saudi Arabia and the storming of the Saudi embassy in Tehran. So, that occurred under the JCPOA. It's not really that revolutionary. China and Russia, these are early days for seeing how they're going to do, and we're getting, only the faintest indications of where they're going to go. But I think the concern here is that Iran is very, very serious about acquiring a nuclear weapon. And the concern is that the measures being taken, if there's not a breakthrough quickly, we're going to be at a situation where people really are faced with a choice between living with a nuclear Iran or active warfare. And I don't think anybody on the Gulf or even in Russia and China wants to see that.
Okay. David Des Roches, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much. I do appreciate the analysis.
Thank you.
Thank you.